Today we're gonna do something a little different, or rather I should say, tonight we're doing something a little different. Yeah, it's definitely coming down. The rain is a lot more worse out here than back home. It's just like a 45-minute drive and then boom, so much more rain, so much more difference. Hopefully I don't ruin my pocket camera. I think the Leica will be okay. It's primarily up under my jacket. I got a real rain jacket on, so it's cool. Just found some flowers under this parking garage here. Even though I use the Leica M3, I don't normally shoot a 50mm on this camera. I've only done it a couple times actually. My main lens of choice for real street is the 28mm, and it is a little tricky because obviously there's no frame lines for 28mm. My second lens of choice is this little 40mm Summicron, and it's mainly because of how incredibly tiny it is. 40mm pretty much is the whole view of the window inside of this M3. Some people say they can even use the whole viewfinder as a 35 by simply ignoring the 50mm frame lines. Either way, I've decided to take things at an even slower pace and just try some normal 50mm shooting with the M3, the way it was meant to be. Now on here I have the Light Lens Lab 50mm 1.2 Noctilucent, which is their remake of the iconic original 1966 Leica Noctilucent. And they did a pretty good job of this. I've already done a full video of this over on my other channel. I'll link that below if you want to check out, I guess, the review of this lens. But I've just been watching some documentaries recently of Saul Leiter. Been going through one of his books, The Unseen Saul Leiter. And then after that, I checked out a quick little mini doc on Alec Soth, and I just been really thinking about this whole idea of finding my voice. I'm not a painter. I've talked about that before. Saul Leiter was both a painter and a photographer, but he seemed to really shoot on a longer lens, and he really seemed to just work at a much slower pace than me and just kind of take in everything. And I feel like a lot of street photographers generally move a lot slower than what my internal energy moves. So one of the reasons for taking up street back in 2022 was to allow myself some meditation, if you will, to kind of get out, smell the flowers, touch grass, and just really just observe the world. I've always been a people watcher ever since I was a little kid, so I guess that's always been the main attraction of street photography for me. In order to kind of figure out what I'm doing, I feel like maybe a longer lens might be the choice. And I say that because in the past, I've gotten surprisingly lucky with the 75mm of Voigtlander f2.5 lens that I've shown the results of that in my Providence video. That was the first and last time I ever chose to shoot on a long lens. Now I know that's longer than a 50, but this is just an example. The keepers that came out of that batch were really good, or at least something that I liked what it was going for. But there were so many unsuccessful shots that came out of that batch where I think that was why I was like, oh, I don't want to use that again. But it made me kind of revisit those shots and think about, this is just an interesting kind of view, because I do tend to have a very narrow point of view of observing things when I'm out and about. But I didn't want to leap right back into the 75 right away. So I thought, let's ease into this and let's just jump to the 50. Plus I've been wanting to take the 1.2 out at nighttime, and the fact it's been so rainy, it kind of was a twofer here. Got to try to find a little umbrella. Luckily I have one of my Capits, a camera wrap for my sling bag, but yeah, I'm gonna need to find a little miniature umbrella for sure. I'm more worried about the blisters. This is the beginning of the experiment, and since we have a 1.2 here, I have to take advantage of that. We are shooting on film. I found this newly expired roll of Cinestill 800T, and we're gonna take that back to downtown. Downtown is somewhere I've been shooting a lot lately. I shot my short film down there. I didn't shoot that, I was in it and I wrote it and directed it, so shout out to my cinematographer on that, Miguel Ordez. I'll link that short film down below if you want to check it out. But as well as I recently shot a music video for one of my video clients down there, so I'll have some recycled B-roll from that and from when I got to test out the new Nikon ZR. But it is nice that I have some of that B-roll because I don't really want to focus too much on capturing B-roll when I'm out there. We've had some pretty horrific weather out here. It's been raining for about 3 days straight here in Los Angeles, but that might help us out even more when we're out on the streets. It's not going to be good for me having to be out in it, but sometimes those do make for more appealing images in my brain, the nasty weather. Let's go see what we can make happen with this 50mm 1.2 and the Cinestill 800T, but I still have about 10 exposures of a hand roll Kentmere 400. So we'll have to knock that out first and then hop on over to that 800T. It is only a few months expired, but I think it'll be okay.
So there's two big major differences here for me. The first one is that you can't really just snipe a shot the way that you normally, or the way that I normally could with a 28, because I'm much tighter than a 28, so I don't have nearly the range of depth of field. But I think that was the purpose, right? To make me try to get more controlled shots. So the other issue is now, because it is literally nighttime, regardless if it's the 800T or not. I'm rating it at 500, by the way, because I think that's the recommended. So now I'm having to, I'm trying to meter every single one of these shots. Luckily I got that Kex meter on there, but still, it's a little weird. It's a little different. I've gone from a hunter to a fisher, and it is a little hard making that transition, but forcing myself to push through it on top of the weather. I hope I'm not destroying my gear. We'll see how it goes. I have to find like little nooks and crannies to like hide in because I don't have an umbrella. So that's what I get for not keeping at least $5 cash on me. So I gotta hide under these little nooks and crannies every now and then. I guess that's good. It like forces you to be a fisherman more because you're like forced to like push off and hide underneath one of these canopies or something. Got me a little cheapo umbrella. It was only $5, but it cost $5 to get $20 out of the ATM. So I'm sitting at about 20 exposures I've already taken. So I'm probably destroying this roll, but hopefully not. Maybe if I can at least get one good. Now that I have an umbrella, I can kind of get a little bit more relaxed. So let's see. Now, I must admit, I am playing around a little bit with pulling focus either all the way near or all the way infinity. I am doing that on purpose, just trying to experiment a little bit. If something looks like it might be a little too boring, maybe just trying to spice it up a little tiny bit. Maybe I'm, being too heavily influenced by Saul Leiter on those little things, but we can all kind of experiment our own little way, just to make things a little more interesting when it might be too boring, just in terms of like light, a gigantic wet down. In the movie industry, they call this a wet down, when it's like, this much water on the ground. What I'm really looking at is just like the reflections and what's happening with the water in terms of light versus water. These probably all suck. I'm like waxing poetic and the photos haven't even been developed yet. I'm out here standing in the rain. Oh my God, dude.
I think that's the most verticals I've ever taken. And I don't know, I guess I was just trying to get the scope of, because it seems like the neon lights are above and you got the wet down on the ground and then the reflection of the lights on the ground. So I guess that's why I was doing so much vertical. You know, I guess what happens is when you're in the process of getting drenched, it's almost like fight or flight mode. I guess what I'm trying to say is in hindsight, it would have been nice to do more horizontals, because there were the few that I did grab, I really liked them. But, you know, if you only do 1 or 2, you know, out of like 36 tries, you're like, maybe it would have been more interesting to just find a vantage point a little further back where you could see the scope from the top of the signs to the reflection on the sidewalk without having to go full portrait mode. That's definitely possible with a 50mm. I mean, come on, it's not that tight of a lens, right? The other thing is the lens, you know, you can tell I was ripping it wide open a lot because I was rating it at 500. And then also I have the meter, the little Kex meter, I have it set to 2/3 over for exposure comp, you know, so I was feeding a lot more light into it, making it a little more light hungry because I didn't want to push the film. I just didn't want to do that. The problem is though, I was shooting that 50mm 1.2 a lot of times wide open at 1.2. And the downside is I didn't have a lot of filters for that lens. And because it was so wet and just straight up drenched outside, I knew that I wanted to put a filter on the front of that lens to help keep it safe from the rain. The downside is the options for a 49mm filter are quite limited in my filter arsenal. I have a circular Pola, so I'm not going to use that. I have the 3-point ND that lens comes with. I'm not going to use that. And then I have an 85B filter. Well, that's what I use when shooting the Cinestill during the day, so I'm not going to use that. So then what am I left with? With what I use on these sharp-ass Sony G lenses, a black satin 3. And that's what I put on the front of that lens. So maybe that is why some of those shots are so soft and dreamy and just wild looking, because it's got a friggin' black satin 3 on the front of it. Now, that lens also came with a crazy hood. It's pretty identical to the hood that comes with the Noctilucent, right? But this is ridiculous. Now, inside of this is a UV filter, but it's not a screw-on filter. It's just kind of like held in here with little pins. And I'm never gonna, I'm sorry, but I'm never gonna use this hood. This hood is insane. So it's a bummer that you can't take the UV filter out of here and, you know, screw it directly onto the lens. This thing is nuts. It's gnarly for me. I would rather let that lens flare till the cows come home than put this crazy ass hood on the front of it. But that's just me. But maybe I should have. But I didn't really notice the lens flaring out that nuts. I was about to say even with that Tiffin Black Satin 3 filter on there, but the reality is the Black Satin 3 just kind of made all the flares just kind of, you know, poof out in little poof balls. Maybe the call here is to find a cool diffusion filter of my choice that's only like an 1/8 or a quarter. I mean, I guess with a UV filter, it doesn't always matter, but I don't like spending a lot of money on a filter for it just to be literally a piece of glass. So, and because I come from the digital world, so I'm always dumbing down those lenses, hence the Black Satin 3. That's like the strongest they make those things. And it's on the 40mm G lens right now with the A7C2 filming this. And you can see like, it's not that soft, you know, I mean, these digital sensors are insane. So I do everything I can to dumb them down. You know, if I'm going to spend that much money, I'd rather get like at least an 1/8. I really do stay away from black pro mist just because they're so cliche and common. So I usually like to use something else. Maybe I'll just throw like a 1/8 Hollywood Black Magic on the front of it. That's maybe what I'll do. Anyways, this is going on way too long. Thank you guys for the support. Man, this channel is slowly getting off the ground and I'm excited. I love all the feedback. Please hit the subscribe button if you're brand new here. We finally broke 500 subs like a video ago, so we're doing good. We're on our way to 600 subs. It would be so rad if we hit 1,000 for the end of the year. Like, that'd be a cool Christmas present. 1,000 subs on the new Freeway Life YouTube channel. That'd be so rad. Please make sure to like the video so it gets out and about. And if you drop a comment, that helps, you know, train the algorithm on who likes the videos. It's been taking quite a while to let the algorithm understand and realize, like, oh, this is a street photography channel. It was, you know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you put in the meta tags, the keywords, all that. It does not matter, right? It takes a long time for the algorithm to figure out what's going on, especially now that YouTube Shorts have infiltrated. Anyways, way too long-winded. I apologize for that, but it's the end. Thank you guys. We'll see you in the next one.
And if you have the proper luck and the holy endurance, the gods just might deliver.